a while and then stop it and see what we got.
Yeah.
And go with it. We just jumped in it with both feet last time.
Yeah, and it turned out. I thought it turned out good, but just again, my name is Luke Bergdorf. This is episode number 2 with retired Lieutenant Nelson Holland. The first time we did this, we had a little bit of a technical issue, so we'll give it another go. But if you don't mind, just introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Nelson Holland. I retired in 1999 from the Arlington Fire Department. Went to work there in 1968 and spent like 31 years there, and then I had a couple of years in the Navy before then. And so anyhow, it was one of those jobs that I really enjoyed, and it probably I wouldn't trade it for any other career that I could have done.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up down here in Alvarado.
Alvarado.
And anyhow, I went to school there, and then when I got out of school, I went in the Navy, and I was in supply and damage control on the when I was in the Navy. And anyhow, I didn't, a few times it mentioned, from guys that, about being a fireman when they get out and everything. But back in Alvarado and back down, there, all they were is smaller volunteer departments with, maybe 1 or 2 people and everything. So I wasn't really exposed to any real, paid fire departments or career as it. So I never even thought about being a fireman, as I grew up. But by doing that, then, like I said, some of the guys that I was in with mentioned, that that's what they might follow up on. And I really never let it to thought too much about it. When I got out, I came and got a job and went to Dallas for Western Electric, the telephone company, which back then, oh wait, that's over. Telemarketer. So,
They're boogers.
Yesterday, I'll tell you about it when we get off. So anyhow, I went to work over there, and I worked there a few years. And it was a great job. I mean, I loved it and everything. With most of back then, we were all just young guys, and we would they hired people right out of the service, and with a bunch of guys like that. But over the years, I realized that a few years there is all inside, and it was pretty much monotonous. I mean, we were repairing telephones, and you do the same thing day in, day out. And I started kind of getting I thought I'd try something else. So I went to work out at Love Field as a refueler. And worked out there, I think about almost a year. But that was pretty brutal. I mean, you're out there in freezing cold on those wings, and you're out there in 105 degree, 10 degrees. And then the main thing was when I was out there, I'd go by the station over there by Love Field, and the firemen would be coming out, and I'd see them, and once in a while I'd stop and talk to them through the fence. They backed up to the deal, and I kind of thought, man, that's something I might do, might try that a little better. And anyhow, I stayed there a little while, and I decided that that wasn't going to work, and so I went back to the telephone company. They were willing to take me back and everything, which is a whole lot easier and controlled and inside, and air conditioned, heat and everything. But I kept thinking about the fire departments and everything, and so I went and applied for Dallas, and I came out pretty good there. With back then they'd give you a veterans benefit on your score, so many points on like your civil service thing, and then your written score. I came out pretty good on all that. And anyhow, but it just kind of rocked along, and I never heard back from them on it and everything. And I didn't know that, I heard later that if you knew somebody, they could tell you, and they'd, bring you in and give you a second look. And so I learned that later, after it's over. But in the meantime, while I was still working for the telephone company, I heard somewhere that, some of these other departments, like Arlington and I believe Duncanville was, Plano, and some of those through there were hiring people, because it was just back in those years, it was such a rapid growth.
Mm-hmm.
And they were putting on firemen really, really fast. And so I kind of checked around, and they all took my application, and pretty good chance. And since I was from over this way, Alvarado and Fort Worth, and Arlington was closer, I decided that I'd probably like to come back this way, back, home-wise. And anyhow, I went in, I took the test, and anyhow, a few weeks later, I got a call back that, come in for an interview. And I interviewed with, I think, Chief, and it was Chief McFadden then. And I believe maybe Henry Griffin was I know he was the training chief, but I don't know if he was one of the interviewers. So they called me back. Then Chief Henry Griffin called me back a few weeks later. And, after I took the test and interviewed, that they had accepted my application, and it was hired, and they want to start the rookie school. And this was at the time they were going to hire, I believe, was either 12 or 9. I can't remember how it was, but we ended up with, they were going to put on the third shift. They were going from the 2 shifts to the 24/48, and they started us in. So we went down there, and that's when. The old training ground was down where the stadium is now. I believe it was called Fort Lane Road, was the street that went into it. And anyhow, we went in there, and Henry pretty much made it, it was hands-on, pretty everything, with he'd run through how to operate everything and what we had going, and then we would do it. And he started out, like your scuba packs and how to operate them, and we'd do them over and over a few times, and just from the ground up, and then the ladders and everything like that. For most of all that was just orientation. Then he went to, like your nozzles and how you operate them, and then later on, the next week or so, we started the burns, and we went through they take stuff in, probably pretty much stuff like they do now with old pallets, and load it up, mattresses and stuff, and we would we'd do the house fires and everything. Then we did your burn pit, and then the propane. We did the tree. I guess y'all still have all those. And anyhow, it's pretty much basic. Then we had the training tower, and we did the sit in the ladders, so like anything else, over and over. And like that. And then a few weeks later, he said, "You guys got it. You're on your own." And of course, went out there, and I went to Station 5 at first. And it was there was 5 stations then. And that's when we went to 3 shifts. And it was Ed Barlow was the lieutenant. He just promoted to lieutenant. He'd been a driver. Roger Mueller became the driver, and I was the firefighter. And so we were all new in our position and everything. And I didn't know it. I mean, I thought those guys had been around forever, and I was, that everything was all good and under control. Then I found out later that Barlow told somebody and everything, said, because he was, like I said, he was first, he was lieutenant at a station. He said, I'd go home at night, I'd be sick at my stomach from worry and everything. But he was just so cool and easygoing and never seemed stressed that I thought he must have been it forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he I guess everybody goes through some of that, where you think this guy's, not having any worry at all. But anyhow, it was great. I mean, it was just great, and we didn't, back then we didn't have a whole lot of EMS calls. It was all mostly, car fires, and we ran on major accidents that they called and stuff like extrications, and stuff out through that way. And I worked there maybe almost 8 months a year, and then I traded to downtown to Central, and I was down there with I think it was one shift it was Captain Forrest Silva. I believe Wayne Neely was lieutenant, and James Allen was the driver, and Stanley Goodwin was maybe the other lieutenant or driver in there, and I was just there a little while, and that's when I worked with Chief Shankland, Bill Shankland. He came to work there, and we were on the same shift together. And I think Dennis Judd came along, and we had a firefighter that came from like Don Beach. He worked there for a while, and I think he went back to Iowa. His family owned a large farm up there. I mean, like one of those thousands of acre ones. Mm-hmm. And so he had a business waiting on him, and he said he'd go back up there for that. Decided that, he said it's kind of a hard choice because he liked doing that, but the deal was going back. And I was on that shift for a while, and then I got changed over to I think it was C shift. I can't remember how they run there at the time. And over there was that's where we had Bill Creek and Ronnie Russell, and I think Jerry Farrow was the driver, and I can't remember the other firefighters that's with us because we all came and go, came and went so fast, and that was great. I mean, I really liked that because Central, you ran back up because it's at that time it was the only ladder truck that was really operating in town, because they had the old ladder like we've talked about before out at Station 5.
The old tiller.
Old tiller truck. But I don't know that it had any real problem, but they were just cautious of ever using it. I think they'd used it a time or two in the year or two before I went to work there, when they would really get a monster fire and they just use it as a water tower. They could set it up in their own time and, be cautious with it and everything. And it worked for that, I think, pretty well, but we didn't use it for. And so Ladder 1 kind of run had the whole town pretty much. And then after I think maybe the first year, then that's when they got the Snorkel 5. Then they added another 5 or 6 people. Mm-hmm. Then to man they made 5 two-company station then, and so that would have been maybe 8 or 9 people, with whatever they had. And most of those guys, I can remember that they hired out of then were guys that were just getting out of service from Vietnam and everything. That was when like Randy Gore, Dennis Judd, there was a couple of others that I can't think of that they hired on then Rick Richards was the guy that they came to work then. And anyhow, they added that on. And I think we went that year with it running. And maybe it was like the next year, they were building 6, was going to be the next station they built. And when they built 6, they, like I said, they were, it was just Arlington, the city was just growing so rapid that probably the most rapid growth, I guess, ever, because when it was, or just almost exploding, because there was nothing really south of Arkansas Lane at all, hardly. And that's when Arkansas Lane was going in, and I went to 6 out there at the time as a driver. I got promoted to driver.
What year did you promote?
That would have been 71 or 2. Can't remember. It was 1 or 2 years. It was only a couple or 3 years before I promoted. And I was, pretty excited to get to make driver and get to go out there and everything. But I really enjoyed, being downtown and the crew and all the kind of doing what we were doing and everything. But anyhow, I went out there, and that's when they got the new snorkel, and I lucked out and was driving it. Got to be the driver on it, and it was just. It was like a day and night between it and the other truck out there.
How were they different?
Well, just in, I think the one out at 5 they put there was American LaFrance. It was a 90-foot, and it was really too big a truck for, I think, the frame they put on it and everything. And the stabilizers were the kind that they didn't extend out like the other ones do now. They were the fold-down type. And once in a while, they actually failed on them a time or two.
That's not good.
I think it was actually lucky that no one ever. She got, but it was always at the time when it didn't. It was pretty well balanced out over the truck and everything. But like I said, they had quite a bit of trouble with it, and they would send a rep 2 or 3 times. I'd be working out there, and they sent a rep out of American LaFrance and the company, and they'd go over it and. They would test it out really hard and get it going and everything. And I think they pretty much ironed it out later, where I'd never heard of it happening anymore, whatever it was happening and everything. But anyhow, the other truck, like I said, was light years ahead. It was made by a totally different company. Let's see, what was the company out of Oshkosh, I believe, Wisconsin, built a snorkel, or maybe built the whole truck, and it was a 75 or 80 foot, and it had the totally different stabilizers that came down, and when you put it down, it was just solid as a rock. I mean, you felt, you never had that feeling of instability at all. And when you would stop it, you didn't get that swing back and forth method that you would get on that other truck or any of that. And it had main thing about it, it had a huge Detroit diesel engine in it, one of the first one of those they went to, and it had probably was actually overpowered, for that and everything. But like I said, I drove it. It was, like I said, for several years. And anyhow, I worked there, and then I got switched back to Station 5 because of the association deals that we kind of talked about, that they figured that we were all sitting around the station, and they needed to break us up and send us all, the people out to different stations, and that would fix their association problems, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they sent me to Station 5 back then, and of course, the other guys, we were all friends with everything, and that didn't make any difference because they were, all most of they were all members and stuff, and so there was no. But
were you president of the association?
I was president, yeah.
What year did you become the president?
That had been around 73 or 4, and that's when. But really, all I did that they talked like I was bringing down the whole world. That we talked with the state association and all them about going for collective bargaining, since we didn't have either civil service or collective bargaining. And man, they thought, you would think that they were, we had, committed some horrendous crime or something, and they. That's back when they kind of operated out of a memo book, whatever the deal would work. They needed a new SOP. He'd just print one out and put it in there. And they came up with an SOP that nobody could speak to the press except the chief and assistant chief as authorized by them. And so I had violated their policy by that, and they actually put me on probation. And they gave everybody, it was time of the year for step raises, and they helped my step raise. And anyhow, we called, the state and international, we told them what was going on. And they all came to town and said, man, that don't mean that you can't talk about, said you're not talking about any investigations, fires, or anything like that. But personnel policies and pay and stuff like that, you've got every right in the world to say anything you want to about that. And so we went to court on that, and anyhow, we won the case. Mm-hmm. Hands down, the judge goes, you can't do that. Said, that's exactly what it means is, you can speak on wages and pay rate and everything. And they were so sure of what they, when they put me on probation, gave me time, that they a few newspapers had asked him, well, was there any other reason? No, he just violated our policy, and said, well, is he okay as his performance as a fireman and everything? Yeah, that's all right. It's just that he violated our policy, and we're not going to have that. So anyhow, we got that injunction there, and that kind of opened the door that we could, operate. The association could, operate better and everything. And as we were growing, the members, kind of it picked up and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's still, we had problems because we didn't have any Jews checkoff or anything like that. It had to be, collected by when they came to meetings, or somebody had come along the station.
It didn't come out of people's paychecks.
No, they wouldn't. No Jews checkoff at all. They said they couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Would not go do it. We even went to the city manager, Ross Calhoun. He was a hell of a nice guy. He just sit and talk with us and everything. He goes, yeah, I see what you want and everything. I understand, but I just can't see helping y'all build a union to fight me.
Yeah.
He was pleasant about it and everything, but said, and I guess in his job, that's what he was, that's the way he looked at it and everything, and so they wouldn't do it. And so we had to just struggle along with it. And we had a little captain out there that had put, Captain Gene Larson, I believe his number was 007. He was one of the first ones with, one of the first, paid firemen to come along.
Mm-hmm.
I guess being the 7th. And he was a little character, just, he was kind of, he came up as he said that when he was in the Navy, he was what they call a fireman there, but a fireman rate in the Navy is like a boiler tender, machinist, and all the mechanical type deals. And I think he was actually like a boiler tender or whatever like that. But they asked him somehow about being a fireman, and he connected it over, and he went and applied, and that's how he became. And like I said, he was a great guy and everything. That he believed in the association and everything deal. Like I said, he would. That's when we had 5 stations. Every payday, or like once a month, he would drive around. Had a little red and white Ford truck. He'd drive around to every station and collect their dues and everything. And that was my actual first experience. Excuse me. With the association. He was. And his first deal he brought up was, like how undermanned we were. That I kind of regress on some of this about the association, but they'd heard that we were terribly undermanned, and that what we might try to do is put some billboards up about and they would show a truck with like an absent fireman on it and everything. And we did that. And of course, the city went wild on that too. Mm-hmm. That was kind of, I'm regressing on that, but that's one of their, anything we did, they wanted to, keep their mouth shut and just come to work. It's what pretty much their deal. And they really didn't do anything to do it and everything, but just made it miserable. And it was so, it was pretty lackadaisical then that we could have our meetings at the fire station. But when all this transpired pretty much, they put a stop to that. They even came out with a deal of there'll be no meetings, there'll be even no talk about association at the fire department. Yeah. Anybody that subject to doing it could be disciplined or whatever. And you know how that's going to work. You're not going to stop anybody from talking about. Mm-hmm. And usually when you do something like that, it's when it's like opens the door.
Oh yeah, lots of fire underneath people.
So anyhow, that was kind of our the kindling of the fire department, and like I said, we were just struggling on financially to keep the thing kind of running and just keep it in touch and everything. And I think maybe I mentioned last time that we would do the country and western shows. Mm-hmm. And they did those before I actually, they were doing one before I became president and everything. And maybe they did one or two before then. And that's when they had Dolly Parton and Porter Wagner come to town. And it was, like I said,
they were probably up and coming by then.
Yeah, they were. It's not like what you think or anything. Dolly was, she was struggling to, she just joined him, and he was the star then. I mean, the TV star, and she needed him for the exposure and everything. Mm-hmm. And anyhow, they came to town, and they had another one that was with them. I was going to mention that I thought was pretty outstanding. That was he went to Merle. What's his name? Merle Tellis. Merle Tellis, I believe. So he went. He took off and went down to see the guys that were at Station 1 that were on duty that couldn't go to the show that night. I thought that was that would be Pam Tillis's father that people would know about now. And I probably heard of him, and he became pretty big later in life, had his TV show and stuff like that. And like I said, they were just people like everybody else. I mean, they were just a little country. That's when they toured around the country in buses.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the jets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They rolled their buses up out back and do it all. And anyhow, actually what was happening was we were taking a beating and everything. We were all doing it for a promoter that would come to town. He would sell ads in a magazine, a program for the deal, for all over to the business out all over town. Actually, I guess it'd be honest day telemarketer. There's no other. We would probably be blocked now from doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
You'd never get any calls. We'd be spammed now. But and the poor firemen, the dummies, we'd go around and collect the money and bring it back to him. And of course, the country and western show get their cut, promoter would get his cut, and we'd get what was left.
Yep.
So I guess some things never change.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd make a little out of it and everything. And we did that for several years and everything till we even tried one time. Probably the last thing we got our feet wet on that was some promoter came to town with us, and we did a circus. It is the same thing, he was going to do the deal, and we did it at what was then 303 Mall.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, they came to town. He was going to have lions and elephants and tigers and all that and everything. When he ended up down there, there was a couple of merry-go-rounds and a Ferris wheel and maybe a pet zoo or something if we were lucky.
Yeah.
And the bad thing about it was 303 Mall looked up and said, you're not going to put all that stuff on our parking lot, the asphalt, because it's going to tear up our parking lot, the heavy trucks and stuff
Mm-hmm.
from the equipment of the Ferris wheels and stuff like that, and they have to anchor them down. And so it put us out on the grass away from the mall, and we went through that debacle, and we fought with them over everything what we did, and anyhow we get it over with, and just like every traveling circus, the next morning, Monday morning, they were gone.
Yeah.
And there was ruts, there were trash, there was everything in the world out there on the ground. Of course, we were out there picking it up and shoveling dirt and trying to make the manager happy,
Mm-hmm.
of what was left. And so that was kind of some of the stuff we went through on, to get it and keep it going. But,
Did you ever hear them talking about whenever they started the association?
not really a whole lot. A few of them did. That would have been, I think, Chief Pat Martin and Chief McFadden and all those. They were the founding deals of it. And they went along and they had a civil service election. And back then, the cities didn't really realize too much what was going on or whatever. And those civil service could have went either way.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom Vandergrift was mayor at the time, and somehow he just decided that it probably wasn't a good idea. And he was, it still is, I imagine the family is a political force in town. And he said, no, it's not a good idea. And of course it failed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no...
He was pretty influential.
Oh, he was very,
Yeah.
He could even vote on what day Sunday came. I mean, he was that powerful, that people were all beholden because he was the guy that had so many things come to town with General Motors. Him and his father went out there and they lobbied for that, the land. They did Six Flags. I mean, they really did, a whole lot as far as the growth of the city of Arlington. There's no doubt that the ball team,
Mm-hmm.
he was the man on it. And like I said, he was a heck of a nice guy and everything, but they just decided, politically, this is not the way it should be. And we would go down to the, of course, then we decided that we couldn't just, do it fighting with the chiefs. We had to go to City Hall, because what we said and told them and what they told the city council and mayor might have been two different things. And it was, we decided that understood how a little more how the process worked. And so we went down there, and he was sort of like the city manager. He said, honestly, I didn't know we had any trouble with our employees at all. And anyhow, we tried to explain, and he had so many, they had so many other things to do that you guys go away and we'll get with you later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the way it was dealt with. And honestly, most of the guys, like I said, Chief Martin McFadden, and I think there was a Chief Malone, and all those guys, they were members that, there was a Captain Holly Bond and them, and they went for that first deal. And after it failed, they pretty much just gave up on it. They seen I think it was one of them overwhelming that, you hadn't even got a chance at all.
Yeah, it got squashed.
It wasn't even a show up almost. And they gave up. And they realized that, and I guess there was a few years before, like, more employees came along, like when all of us did, and decided, and we talked with other associations around town, and around the area, and how they were and how far we were behind on that stuff, that we really needed to do some stuff. And by then, those guys, like McFadden and them, they were chiefs. So they, the way the city did, they go, well, we don't want you in there. And they felt that their better deal was to go the city way of doing stuff and everything. And I guess there's still people that feel that way today, but anyhow, that's kind of how it ended up, a divide in the people on members and not members. The way I kind of understood how they felt that they already got there, they were promoted, they had their career, it was going pretty good, and why take a chance on something that might or might not work, and which makes total sense and everything. But we were all, the younger guys, like where I was at, we were still up and, dealing with the thing of what, how promotions were, how you were treated, and disciplinary actions, because how one guy would be disciplined would be totally different from the other. You had no set rules on how they did. Like I said, he had his loose leaf folder, and he'd find something in there that pertained to that, and he'd decide on it. And that was final say. There was no grievance board, there was nothing. And anyhow, as we worked with the other departments around there, we seen that, we almost necessity that you do it. When, either had to do it or move on. It was not either, And so we stayed involved with it, and we had guys with the state association, a chief over at Fort Worth. He was Chief Alton Bostic. He was a state vice president and a chief at Fort Worth. And we go, why can't it be this way here? It shouldn't be that kind of you or they deal. And they'd come over, and when things would have come up, like on a grievance or somebody being badly disciplined, like fired over something they shouldn't be or something, that we would have something to stand on. And the way it was, like I said, no grievance policy. All we had, honestly, was to go to court. There wasn't no checks and balance at all. There was, one way that they could decide one way on one person, and another way on another person. So, it was that way. And like I said, we were growing so rapidly that, people would keep adding on. And we went through there a few years like that. I was president, and I did it for several years, and finally said I could, had to give it up. And I think I stepped down maybe to vice president or whatever, and that's when Chief Ron McAndrew ran for president. I think he and Captain Larry Steele, and of course 2 great guys. We couldn't go wrong either way. And there it really it took off. I mean, the association. By then I wasn't so. Us guys in my group weren't so much. This younger group of which hired on, like I was telling you about, the guys from Vietnam, the ones that came on maybe 5 years later, there when they added on Station 6 and 7 and those.
Mm-hmm.
There was those guys. I think it was like him and Captain Paul Brewer and a bunch of those guys that Larry Steele and Benny Hilliard, Johnny Watson. All those guys were out of Vietnam, out of the military, and they grew up, and all those guys became involved in everything. And like I said, we couldn't have had a better president, I don't think, than Ron McAndrews, because he was Mr. Everything. He had a great personality, and he could do everything. No, there wasn't a person in the world that didn't like him, or he'd get along with anybody. And it was actually a brilliant person too to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
That I remember one time when we were going to school over. Since I was out of service, and all those guys like them, they would be going to. We went to school over TCJC on the VA benefit bills and everything. And so I was in a class with Ronnie Mack, what I call him, and anyhow, I sit down there and be studying and everything. He'd challenge. The first thing he'd do is walk in and challenge the course, and he'd run through the test, go back, get another one, and he'd be gone. And I said, something ain't right about this. But I felt like, man, I got to be such a dummy and everything. But anyhow, I go back to the station, I'm listening, and the guys are already talking about, the guys in class would be down at Central studying and everything. They'd be studying their ass off. That'd be Ronnie Mack running around smoking his pipe, playing and everything. So he was just that kind of guy that could do, had the personality to do it, and he just thought it came natural.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't for him. And he really just, him and like Steele and Johnny Watson, there's Pat Hunter, and all those guys came up later, and they kind of become an association after that. And like I said, Johnny Watson I think he was vice president for several years. He was good and everything. And Rodney Sullivan, he went through a lot of that. He became captain, and he was one of those really smart guys that could do a lot of things. And he was actually the first guy. We came in, and I'll regress a little bit if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We just had one big map of the city, and they'd call out, give you an address, whatever station you were at, and you just figured it out and run with it, pretty much, So he came in and studied up a little bit, and he divided up your district maps and all the stuff like that, and implemented all that.
All the box numbers.
The box numbers and stuff like that. He was great at all that. And he was really instrumental in the association. He was more in my day. I'm kind of switching back and forth a little on which it was, but he one time I don't remember if they gave him time off or something for talking to the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, we went to court, and anyhow, by then the city got a little wiser on how they could do it. And they didn't fire him or anything, but they gave him time off, I believe, or docked him some pay or something. But they didn't give him. The deal was that's when the city sold garbage bags. The station sold them.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow he came in his station and they ran out. And a couple of citizens called in, couldn't pick up their deal. And of course, downtown, they seen a chance that, which it happened all over town. But there's a association Vice President Rodney Sullivan's let it run out. We better give him some time, better discipline him heavy for this so we don't do this. So anyhow, we went back to court, and it goes to anything like his in court days now. There's no black and white, gray or white. He said, y'all do have the injunction that they can't do anything for y'all do it, through your association union business. But there gets to be gray areas that we can't step in there and tell them what they can and what they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline it. He said, we're going to find that on the city side of this, because by then I'm sure there was political pressure going at the judge too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're talking some political heavyweights through that whole area. And I'm sure they still can swing both ways now.
Yep.
That when they step in, even the judge will say, there's legal and there's, gray. So anyhow, stuff like that would happen. That you knew that you were, you were jeopardizing your career and stuff a little bit. And one thing came up, like they would do stuff like in this same time when they did Captain Sullivan, Ronnie Mack was captain at Central. And I remember I wasn't at Central at the time. And that's when the admin was at Station 1, up the front in the offices.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided they wanted his shift at the station after 5 o'clock to caulk and paint around the flooring and caulk the ceilings and stuff and paint. And they wanted the caulking done first, the so shift. They wanted to see us done. Anyhow, Ronnie Mack was out there and he was doing it. And other guys go, because they're going to come and help. He said, "Yeah, you guys go on." And going up there, back to the day room, said, "They're after me anyway. They're not after you guys."
Mm-hmm.
It was that kind of deal that they would, cause you a little grief and find little chores for you to do and just make your life a little miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And, but anyhow, along those years that we kept on, and I think the thing that finally helped us out, with the association that really did it. We looked up one time, and the city was allowing United Fund to do check off, and they had maybe a couple of other deals. And we said, if you can do all these other people, and all these other cities can do it, why not us?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had to go to court on that one. They threw down, like I said, it was their belief that we're not going to help you any way in the world. And so it's for our association, it's been a
battle
all the way through. And I think a lot of others, little departments and stuff grew up without some of that grief. Grand Prairie was almost like our sister along the line there. And like when Arlington went for it the first time, I think Grand Prairie did. Maybe it was like, a North Texas area kind of deal, the old voting thing. They passed it and got it. So they never had any grief over it. Dallas had it, and, all there. And a lot of cities felt that it was actually a benefit to them, that they just implemented it to start with. And which it did. It had already a lot of things that Arlington had to come along and do begrudgingly on their own, because just the way they, we had to go on our promotional test. They had us do your written test, your assessment test by your station officers and district chiefs and stuff. And then they had your, what do you call it, your personnel, chief's assessment, a board assessment deal. And with all those, pretty much your written test and seniority, they had a tendency to slip behind. You could just pick up that list and go, you see the list of where it's like this one way, like the written and seniority and all the stuff like that along. Then you go, this guy's going to come on top. This guy's going to be here and this. And you know what? It damn well happened every time. Just luck, I guess. And you didn't have to deal that with civil service deals. Which was totally, and there was no need for it and everything. And which they figured out, up through driver, lieutenant, and captain, that didn't bother them too much. But then it came down to when you become district chiefs and stuff like that, decided to throw down on that. Like, are you going to be on this side? And they would put pressure on those chiefs to get out. If can't hardly do both, is what they tell them. You're going to be on one side or other. And they would, most of the chiefs would say, and I could even understand it, I'm not going to fight you guys. I'm going to give you I'm not going to do nothing wrong. You do your job, do it right. You're not going to have any grief with us. They'd be stand-up guys like that. But I'm not going to, really. Several of them, I can't recall who they were, but would go ahead and turn, if they were members, would turn in their resignation just to say, hey, okay. But they would just put it that way, that I'm not going. And they could realize, I guess it's being unfair, their whole career was at stake over just whether they do that or not. And some of them would. And then there was one, I think Chief Elton Vaughn was the first that I can recall that said, I believe in, I want to stay, because he'd been our association president when I took over after him. He said, I'm going to stay a member, and I'm going to try to just do the job right from both sides. And it worked. He didn't have any, as far as I know, he didn't have any problem anyway, because there was no conflict on, but just do what's right. And most of the guys, most of the disciplinary and deals in the deal, all the firemen that are involved in the association and wanted to be there, we're going to do a good job. They were, and I felt like that I could separate it in two different things when I go on duty. I was going to do the very best job I could on every fire I could, every incident I could. And when I went to training, learn everything I can and be the very best, on the job. I even felt that, if the day ever came that I couldn't do it, and it wouldn't be in the best benefit of, my co-workers and the public, and that probably even my own step down. So I wasn't going to take any, and I think 99% of the firemen still feel that way. That you go there and you're a professional, and I see it now that, even not just Arlington, of course I still got 1329 on everything I got around here. And I'm gonna hit you up for some more hats later. Some new ones.
Yeah.
But you see that pride, and even like I said, I have even a little more respect for the Arlington ones, the association, because I know what they had to go through, and still probably do. That it's a little more battle than it was and with others. And now, like I'm gonna regress a little second, like Mission Chief Bond, he would end up be the chief of Mansfield, and we worked with him. I worked out at 7 and 13 and some of the Southside stations, and was a great chief. You can wear both hats, if you approach it right. I mean, but that thing that was painted on back then by us, how it would be either one side or the other. You had to be, they did the thing, which, in some, like in Amazon, big companies and UPS, that there's got to be management and there's got to be labor. But that don't mean you can't do a job in either side.
It's the same team.
Yeah. That you gotta take the other person out and be willing to, because now, and two of that's came from back when personnel now are very valuable. I mean, a trained fireman with his EMT, EMS, and paramedic skill, he is, they've got a lot of money in you. And you just don't pick anybody up off the street to do that. And companies are coming to see that you don't want them selling garbage bags or painting fires. We did all that. We painted fire plugs. We cut weeds around them, which I really didn't have that much. I didn't feel degraded by doing the fire plugs because I felt we were getting something out of that. That it was, we know where the plugs were and the hydrants and plugs were. And sometimes we look up and say, man, we can't make a lay from here to there. And we could go back to the guys in prevention and inspection and say, y'all need to take a look at that. And, that somewhat had some benefit because it was totally job related. I didn't figure that was that degrading. But the old garbage bags, I could not see.
You couldn't stand that.
I couldn't see too much beneficial.
Yeah.
Other than, we might get a job at 7-Eleven and they could do the same thing probably a little easier. And it wouldn't be the deal of getting one of your captains laid off or given time off for that. But it was, that has transpired. But I even recall, I'm going to jump around, and I seen Charlie Wright's, my co-workers deal on some of the deals. And they even felt like back then they could put us on for a few weeks, and they didn't realize the training that even we were still going through. Some of the old chiefs and them would say, if you don't like it, when we were doing the association stuff, if you don't like it, there's a whole lot of Highway 80 out there. You ought to get it. And now maybe they've seen that they don't want you guys picking up, getting on 80, go to Dallas and Fort Worth and these other cities, maybe at a pay raise. So even that's how the world is actually, I've seen now as I'm older, the world has transpired that you're a trained individual in everything, that you notice that You just don't get somebody to walk in. And I even heard one person that was in downtown, and it was like a secretary to say that all a fireman is an overpaid garbage collector, in which that is, I think that's actually insult to both of us. I mean, to the firefighters because you're actually, you look over in Dallas now, and you see the mess when they don't have the people doing the job and being diligent about it. That you shouldn't be just degrading another person's job, because we saw in this pandemic how important a lot of people were. Those truck drivers out there on the road that could make a delivery because they were quarantined and stuff like that. So maybe in this day and time, they've seen the value personnel a little more. But we were, and even like in the military, when I was in, they still had the draft. They had us in for 2 or 3 years, and you were going to do it or go to jail. And so they were careless with the people, not just myself, but I mean all the people going through there, and that how you were treated, because if you didn't fall in line, you go through bad time, then you go to jail, then you come out with a BCD, bad conduct discharge, and you were ruined then from any quality employment. The rest of it'd follow you around the rest of your life. So now the thing is, I'm glad to see that we're appreciated. I want to ramble a little bit. When the football player got hurt the other night, I took it as serious as anybody else, because I realized how serious it is, and I realized how those guys hit like lightning, and every play can be your last. I mean, it's frightening to see what they're doing. And I didn't really, what I'm going to digress to without saying anything, I was really proud of the firemen and paramedics, the EMTs, that I think they didn't get their just due on this thing. I'm praying for for the player just like everybody else. But I would love to see them say, man, those guys are the heroes. I'd like to see them introduced as the ones, because what I understand, they revived him twice. And you can understand that can be pretty brutal. Jumping over somebody's chest and giving the CPR. It's still, I know y'all have come a long way, but it's still brutal and hands-on. There's nothing, automatic. You go out there and turn something on, it fixes them up, and the doctor fixes it, and they go home. Yeah. It is still that these guys need. And I'd like to see those paramedics and those people brought to light.
Yeah, they seem like they did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Anytime you come out with an outcome that you do, that I was pretty much kind of ramble a little bit, and I was kind of in the old deal of we didn't do it much. EMS was kind of I felt like it was pushed on us, because back when we were doing the firefighting and stuff like that, and you became EMTs for, like I said, to go to major accidents, and you do all that stuff, and then it just started building on. Pretty soon you started going to school, and it became serious, and they actually cut out the BS. I mean, we went out to, I realized at the end that you better study, you wasn't going to pass the thing. You better study it hard too. They took us down to UTA, and they set us 5 feet apart and handed out your sheet. And you took your test, and it's not planned, and you're going to do it. And then I realized that, man, you need to either, and I had to work at it pretty much since I was the older guy in the thing. And honestly, when you're older, you just don't pick up things as fast and as easy as you do. Like I said, I still fight with my TV set, my tuning it, my iPhone. I I'm liable to call somebody all over the world, and I'm technically challenged is trying to what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
And so I had to struggle through that stuff and everything. And the one thing that made me, I'm going to tell this one story, and it ain't no, I walked out with my knees knocking. It was when we was going through our EMT rotations. And we went over and they rotate us like, I think, a week at Peter Smith. And we seen everything in the world. You did little CPR as you was walking in to, they bring somebody in if they need to do. We lend a hand with pulling stretchers. And I thought, I've got this thing going pretty much and doing pretty good. And we were on I was probably on my last few hours of my rotation down there, and anyhow, we got a call that there was a house fire, and I believe South District over there. There was a lady coming in, badly burned, and was pregnant and ready to deliver, and all that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what do we got here? And we pulled up, and I can't remember the paramedic, one of the firemen was on the ambulance, was doing CPR, on her chest. And this lady, she didn't survive. Her eyelids were bit off, her bliss was blistered. It was, she wasn't gonna make it. And the guy goes, here. I'm going, oh my God, what are we going to, get after it? And so we start CPR, and I'm doing it, and she's blistered up, everything, and we're doing it. And I think he's a chief now. Bill McWhorter was my partner then, and we're doing rotation on it, and we're doing it as we're rolling in, and it was, this was kind of like you say, out of my pay grade. And I realize now that a lot of things can get out of your pay grade really fast, and how important that stuff is. We pull in, that doctor on duty is already in his scrubs. He says, I'm taking the baby. And so we're doing the compressions and breaths. Man, he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and he'd holler scalpel. And he's did the surgery right there, reached in, took the baby off, and we're going like that. You can stop now. And that's when I realized that, how the thing had come a full turn onto how important our job was, that you can be there in that any 1 second, that you're the man. There ain't no waiting on somebody else to help you do anything. You're there, and that's how serious that our jobs are. Mm-hmm. And that's why now I have such great respect that, maybe I've helped open the door and made it, helped things change a little bit in the fire service, in which a lot of it's, I know this happens every day throughout the nation. Mm-hmm. Like my nephew, my best buddy there, I got his Green Beret. He was a paramedic in the Green Beret. And I went to see his initiation in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He still, I talked with him Sunday night, and he says I'm inspiration for what he is and everything. And so, like we say, what we do is and mm-hmm. what we did is very important. Mm-hmm. And every fire, you got to give it everything you got. And I was kind of like everyone else. I go out there, and I was already looking for what I was thinking about. What are you going to do on that next day off? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that, and how do you make some money? And we had to look at that a whole lot back then, because our pay was, everybody then had to have like 2 and 3 3 jobs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness that y'all came in line a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got a long way to go to be where y'all need to. I don't know that you'll ever be actually for what you do and the job that you'll be, because like you see it every day, there is no just easy call.
Mm-hmm.
I see the guys come up over here the other day. They were over here at this little daycare across the street, and I think, man, what you're doing is important.
Mm-hmm.
It may be just go in and check somebody out. They're all right. Go back. It may be one of those calls that you make 100 or 200 to 1 that don't make any difference at all. Anybody could have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But sooner or later, you're going to get that call that it's your time. They're going to ring on you. And anyhow, it's I really it was one of, I couldn't have think if I did it all over, would I done any other career or whatever. I think, well, maybe I might have went to another department, but I don't know that I had the friends that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, with Johnny Watson, Randy Gore, and Rodney Sullivan, Ronnie Mack, Larry Steele, and all those guys, they were really, Gene Larson, and he was really, to me, he was Mr. Firefighter Association, Captain Gene 007, and he believed in it so much that, you could not help, be inspired by it.
Mm-hmm.
And you work with those guys that, you see that they do such a great job that makes you want to do a better job.
Mm-hmm.
And, but anyhow, you got any questions I didn't cover? Or,
no, just
over-rambled?
How about some fires?
Uh,
What about any fires that you remember?
Well, I'll kind of double dip on some of them. Like Charlie Wright covered the Sherry Park. Those were monstrous, and that's when you get to those that you feel overpowered. That, wow, this is over my head.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to be here a while.
Yeah.
And I think now maybe y'all have got a little better handle on it, because they just let them build acres wide open with no restrictions on them at all. And what was the bad thing of those doing was plumber sweating pipes.
Mm-hmm.
was the main thing that they would do it. And they would leave some, and they would all come in 2 or 3 in the morning. And you could see them on the horizon of going, we're going to be here a while.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, you'll still get one like that. You get them. And those were really, they were brutal too, because it could be, I think, conflagrations on what they spread from one to another, because they let them build so much in raw material.
Mm-hmm.
That the fire load was there, and they weren't restricted anyway, and they would let them just go in and frame out blocks of it, where if they come in and made them sheetrock some of it, and I hope they're doing it much better now.
Mm-hmm.
in smaller areas. They just leave those wide areas unprotected like that. That they were just left for, and we really couldn't do much other than set up your water towers, your spray apparatus, and ground nozzles, and cover the area, because there was just no putting them out. I mean, until you get to a point and everything that you did. And we had those like that. We had several of those. And then you'd have we had a few of I had the one on the Godfrey butane,
mm-hmm.
where butane and propane they just let them sit. They weren't as careful in the storage, keeping the big tanks away from the small ones. They just weren't handling it as carefully as they could have with the equipment too.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of did like everything else. You have one and a little careless here or there, which can happen on any of it. You know, a spark all it's going to take with those things. And
What happened at the Godfrey?
I think it's maybe I wasn't on duty, but I went in later. And it was a spark with a driver filling a truck, or like people can come up and fill their tanks. I don't know which one it was,
Mm-hmm.
but all it took was that. And I guess they didn't have the tanks, and the huge tanks started lighting one another off. And it was monstrous. It went on for several days of that and everything, in which you're not really gonna just put it out. What they got to do is, let one tank burn out, get the others turned off, and
Mm-hmm.
still pretty much you got to do the same today. I still see them. Y'all have them in Dallas and other cities have, where they'll get one going and they can run on you pretty fast when they just a little this or that. And but they did that, and those things are. Until you went on, you just can't believe how scary it was. And I'm gonna regress a little bit. And you ask on the propane thing, back when I went to work in '68, they let gas stations have above ground gasoline tanks. I don't know if most people don't remember those, but they put in a little cheap service station. All it would be just a little booth for you to walk up and pay. They put up several thousand gallon above ground tank on each side of it, and just run the lines over to some pumps not very far away, 30, 40 feet
Mm-hmm.
away from them. And there's a wonder we didn't have a whole lot more than we did.
Mm-hmm.
That they did. And I didn't go on the one, but they had one right over here on 287 where they ran on, and a firefighter I worked with, and his driver was named, I think, Nick Evans. They ran on it, and I think Mansfield and Kennedale and all of them ran on it. And it was one of those above ground tanks. And when they got there, one of them was already burning from on the line. They got there, and somehow they put the tank on the other side of a fence behind the station, just a barbed wire fence. It wasn't nothing. And probably the station attendant, of course, he got out and ran like hell, which is, a good thing he did. And probably what saved Clyde, the lieutenant, they were on our what you call tank truck or brush truck, and they had to go down a few maybe 100 feet or 200 feet away to open the gate to come in behind it to get to the tank. It's probably what saved or something like that. It saved their life, or they've been right there up on the other tank when it exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And even at that, when that tank had exploded, it burnt Lieutenant Truex's. He had 70-80% burns all over his body.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't expected to live. And the firefighter, Evans, I believe was his name. I think maybe what saved him, it was far enough away, and he was on the other side of the truck. And the engineer, I can't remember, I think it was, I'll think of his name later, but he was far enough away at the plug. It was Petty, A.O. Petty, I can't remember, he's Bob Petty. I think he was the driver, and he was hooking up from the plug to get him a deal that saved his life. So that's how they survived, is what I understand on it and everything. But Lieutenant Truex, he was in the burn care there at Arlington for weeks and months of it, and he was so severely burnt.
I believe, did some firemen die from a different department?
Not from that.
Not from that?
Not from that one, okay. I don't think. It was, let's see, there was, I think the only other loss we had on duty, he was the most probably severely, but I mean, he was burnt. Now, Captain Ronnie Mack, he died on duty on the scene of a heart attack that, and he was in the house, that he just felt frustrated about what was going on at the scene. Said everybody was yelling at him, do something. And it's back when I think they call it a conflagration. They would go from one to another, and we were talking about it early on others when they had wood shingle roofs, and they were burning over on the next block and whatever. And then more chiefs come up and they'd scream at you. And you go, I'm doing all I can. What we need is more people. I mean, and I always felt like that's what chiefs do. It's not, and but I think his statement was, there's too many damn chiefs here. And so he went back in, and this had a heart attack on the scene. And then it was, the stress. I mean, you just look and you're totally helpless at the deal. And the shame is, I mean, and it's starting to get it, you see things like that happening now with fires get away from you. One of the last I went to was a grass fire down here off 287, down where almost a mile or so from where those where they got burned at. Was a guy was cutting up cars with a torch, and he set off a grass fire. You think, damn, no grass fire. You go, but pretty soon there was cars all over that huge wrecking yard burning. It burned over, got over, and started on a few houses. And then it was heading for some apartments. Pretty soon it's not a damn no grass fire anymore. And you guys could still have those too. I mean, and you feel pretty dang helpless when you're on that kind of stuff and everything. And of course it starts getting, we get there, and of course Kennedale and Mansfield and everybody else starts coming and everything, helping us out. And I'm on an engine, and all we can do is not too much, because there's no, there's two of us are on the deal in an engine pumping, and we can only haul a little water up there and back and forth, and it takes that much time. And there's where you realize you need to go back some of that whole basics of quick strike stuff to get it and hit the small stuff fast, and before it gets out, because it, you get where you can handle the huge structures, where you can bring enough trucks in to surround it and stuff like that. But where the ones out in the open, like you see in California, Oregon, New Mexico, all that, they still get away from you.
And there ain't much you can do once it starts running. And
nothing can take care of it except equipment to handle it. And it kind of goes back to what we had, those little quick strike trucks with 250, 500 gallon tanks on them there that you can, probably if we'd had several of those and that grass fire out there that hit fast enough, might have got it before it spread to the, other stuff and everything, because it's easier to do that way. But those, and then everybody talked about, they tell you about the Crisco fire, the huge one. I guess, overall, it was one of those that I was on for a good while. You just on your whole shift, you sit and we'd pump water a while, and then they'd say, we quit because we're running over the creeks. And it, like I said, it was flooding out the streams down at Six Flags and all that how it works. And so that shows the need of, you need those inspectors and make them keep that stuff divided.
Mm-hmm.
You don't put too big a fire load in one area, and you're still setting up a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they ran into there.
Yeah.
What else you got?
So you started in '68 and retired in '99. You put 31 years in. What were some of the biggest changes from start to finish you saw in the department?
Oh, I would say overall in the equipment, it really, now the trucks are beautiful. I mean, as far as looking and how they work. You get in a truck, you sit there, you put on your air pack and get ready to go, but that still don't, this makes it more helpful that they've advanced that that you guys can get in and be ready for, to do it, because I can remember jumping in one of those little, what we call tank trucks, you all call brush fire wagons, and you'd have your officer would have your sling pack, and the driver would be driving like hell to get there, and you'd be trying to get that on, you try to be talking on the radio, to do other stuff, and then get out, pull your hose, then do everything. I mean, now at least maybe y'all can keep 3 people, 4 people on a truck, which I hope they do. That's mandatory, that you need that guy to get out there and pull the plug. Pull your line when it's needed. And that officer is busier than hell.
Mm-hmm.
He's making his size up. He's talking to a dozen people at one time. Making it, it can go anything in the world that you just don't know what all's hitting you at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs that guy back there ready to jerk that line, rather than having add that in to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of, you feel like it that way, but it's still, same thing's still there. So, what else you got?
Looking back on your career, would you change anything about what you did?
Oh, probably thinking over. I would probably slow down and take it a little easier. That I wish I could have realized that, like some of the things, they're going to work out in time. It will work out. And like I say, how the department is going to take care of its own, and how it was. But that's still, wish you could look into the future.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that. I mean, it's, you wish, wish you could have, should have, and it just, it's not. But overall, I really had a great career. I loved every moment of it. I love the guys that, I worked with. It's, people ask me what I miss about it. And I miss, that fellowship that you have with the guys, and honestly, some of us guys we worked with are as different as day and night.
Mm-hmm.
Some from, you come from every background in the world, but once you put yourself in the same situation, the same deal for that 24 hours, man, he's your best buddy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your life is dependent on him. You're dependent on your career for him to do the right thing. So you may be sitting there wishing he'd do something different, or at the station and this and that, and 1,000 things going on like that. But you do, you hold on to those fellowships like you do there. Like I still, one thing I'm going to kind of wrap, I love looking on Facebook, because somehow I can keep up with some of my older, worker, the guys that have moved off and living all over the state, different parts of the nation. I'll throw out some names like Dennis Judd. He went to work with us. Right, I think he worked at Central. We rode the squad together down there. We were drivers out at Station 6. He was vice president of the association and did a lot of work for that. Became one of the great captains for everybody. He shows that everybody could, you can wear both shoes. Be a great officer, good officer, and do a good job as far as that. I mean, guys like him, he lives, I think, down on the coast. Bob Bennett, I think he went on to the National Fire Academy. I think he taught there. He lives in East Texas now, I think. I've maybe seen once or twice at a funeral. Don't even have time. The shame is you don't get time to talk to all those guys there. You just maybe whatever you can, you see those guys, and you remember them. Just remembering those guys that you worked with. And like I said, I see them, they'll put on there, and I know where they're at and how they're doing, and kind of keep up with that. Knowing that they're still plugging along and out there, and enjoy, their career, and they've worked, they have worked for it. And I think that's the difference now is that maybe, that we did have the guys that were before us left us something, retirement system that we wouldn't just have to go, look for what was going to happen next when we could retire. That we couldn't retire affluently, but we could comfortably maybe. That's the great thing about, I think, retiring a firefighter, being able to retire a firefighter. And I see that from firefighters all over the area when I, keep in run in contact with, that most of all the older retirement are able to do well. And that's it's a relief not to be a stress. That when you do retire, that you'll have good insurance, which is great, because I think that's one thing that maybe we did have a help a hand, and the city. I give the city a lot of grief, but I think they did do us a solid on trying to provide us some good insurance when they could, and they did us some things that went beyond the have to, because in today's world you see a lot of in the door, out the door employees. They offer you money up front. You work here. If you can find a better job, you might better take it, because that's all there is what you get there. And I hope the fire service will always remain, a solid, service like it is. It should, because said when firefighters go on a call, you don't need somebody that's doing it on a part-time basis or going to work here and then skip over. I think what I remember, you guys know more about it now, that there was a city in Arizona went with a deal of a private fire department, and I never heard how it worked out, but I can't see how that would ever be too beneficial on how it would, because they're going to be looking out at that bottom line. And there's, I think, firefighters and police officers, paramedics, and EMTs are all guys that are giving back more than dollars and cents, is what I see out of it. That you're not going to be on a return on your investment. It's like, I'm going to go back to the thing what happened the other night. You don't see the job that those guys are I mean, you're undercover. I mean, whatever. Say people take fire service and them for granted of what they did and the calls you make. I want to say that I'm lucky to live over here where I'm at the corner of Everman, and they got a super little fire department. It's a small one, but their firefighters and paramedics, I can't explain how much I owe to them because my wife is a type 1 diabetic. Mm-hmm. And a few times she's going into insulin shock. And I can do CPR, I can do a lot of stuff, but I can't IV her. Mm-hmm. And they've came out over the years 15 or 20 times. And after the deal, they know exactly where they come up. They do such a great job. Man, I can't, now I do what I can. I've got the lights on, I've got the doors open. I'm standing at the street trying to make their job as easy as possible. I got things out of the way. Mm-hmm. And man, they come in and I can't thank them enough for what they did. And they're lucky over there, firefighter, paramedic, Ray Richardson. I don't know if he still is the mayor, but mm-hmm. every time I see him, I go try to hug on him and tell him what a great job his firefighters and paramedics. And I seen him over here the other day at the ladies put in a little nursery and daycare for handicapped children, and they're at, and they know their district, they do the job. And the older lady next door, she had was having chest pains and some sort of episode, and they were there getting ready to take her in, and all I could I jump on my golf cart, I run over there, and anything I can do, and all I could do is maybe ask her, can I lock up the house, put her dog out, mm-hmm. stuff like that, and talk to them, where you're taking her, so I could give the message to their children when they called, mm-hmm. and everything, and see how professional they are. And my neighbor next door died here last October, November. And they responded, and bless their heart, they over here. I mean, he was a heart patient all along, and they knew it and everything. And there was nothing they could do for him. And they had to come over with the three of them, do CPR. They were doing CPR and leave their engine, and then come back, work him while they could. Mm-hmm. And then come back and pick up their engine. So that's kind of where we were back in my early days. Mm-hmm. So those guys, I mean, still, you realize what those guys are doing. They're doing the very best that they can with what they got. Mm-hmm. And
we got a lot of a new firemen in Arlington, new firefighters, and we just got a lot of people too. What sort of advice would you give them getting into the fire service?
Join an association. Join it and be involved, and go to these other cities and associations and get familiar with them, mm-hmm. and see how they're at. That you won't feel ostracized, that you're outside the deal. Go talk to them and find out how it feels to be in one of those deals where that puts you all on the same side. Mm-hmm. And we're all brothers in it. Even that battalion chief or chief that's a member, you'll feel if he's in there battling for you, that he's got your back. Mm-hmm. That it'll pay off. It'd be my first thing, and go to everything you can, and like we kind of went over it about how things for that old saying I get back to how things change, more they are the same. We kind of did that in the same way of how we operated. A couple people go out, and they're like we just said, everyone came over here, and took care of my neighbor there the best he could. They worked him all the way downtown. They couldn't save him, but nobody could.
Mm-hmm.
But he had that chance, and they've saved my wife's life numerous times
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So that's what I'd advise you, the younger guys to do it, and love every minute of it because it goes so damn fast. It'll be over in a blink of your eye. I mean, and you're gonna be like me. You're gonna think these bullshit calls. I got to go on another one, and you got to be a fireman to realize what it's like. You make 100 of them to one no shit calls,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll think, what are we doing again? And you're pissed off, you're tired, you're sleepy. You may have been running all night, and you're getting one of those calls. You think, not again. I wish that human nature is going to catch you. And I had one of those that I want to bring up that I don't know if y'all heard of the baby Chloe incident of we had that call of it was over in 12's district, I believe, and we ran back up there. There was a child missing, thought in a creek, a ditch, or something, and they needed help on it. And then it came over, and they traced it down to it was in a child in a dumpster. And so somehow maybe the other station was out on a call, and we ended up there first. And I'm still, in the seat, riding lieutenant, bitching and I wish people would go to bed at night. They wouldn't be out doing this bullshit, the old stuff like that. If they go to bed, they wouldn't be out listening to dumpsters or something like that. I walk up, and I hear this noise in the dumpster, and this policeman raises up and hands me a baby. I'm going, holy shit, what do we got here? Mm-hmm. And it was that baby that somebody had threw in a dumpster, and he was on the scene first. And like I said, you're going to get that call. One out of how many? All them BS calls that you're out there and turn around, go back, and everything from it. And so luckily I'm there. I kind of wrapped the baby up, said it was doing fine. And as luck would have it again, here the paramedics, they show up, and all I did was, here, you guys take this.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, you got to be, that's the one that you're there for. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that policeman was as glad to see me as I was that paramedic up the line.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to be doing it, and they're going to ring your number sooner or later. You're not going to, somebody else to take care of it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you're going to know the frustration. And there is a lot of that you see that this doesn't have to be, and a lot of it is. That I'm sure, like my guys up here at Everman, they need all the help they could get. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I know it's hard to do when you're still working. Maybe you could check with those guys at those stations, those small, like them in Mansfield, and they're fighting that budget down. There's nothing that they're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just they're fighting with all they can with what they got. And like I said, we owe so much to those people. And over the years, you'll realize that it's that of fulfilling a job. It's not the money at all. That probably, if you're just the total, you could do something else, whatever. Because I know several times I had offers that I could have did different stuff, and it'd been a pay raise. Whether I came out ahead in the long run or not, you don't ever know how it's going to happen. But I had my own business later, and tried to make a little money on the side and everything. But overall, as a career, that's what I would do. Is I advise the newer firemen, younger guys to do. Is like say first thing, get involved. get involved with, whatever you can do to be, to help some, those deals. What we did was what is the charity Angel Flight.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great deal where you can go out and help handicapped kids. I love that one. Your association can get involved in those, and then that'll give you back a whole lot more than you'll ever do. Several of those, all of those deals that where you can, even now, how we see how the world has changed. Those food banks, go out there to them and help those people hand out food, and you'll see the need in people, because this world is is changing, and if you're not careful, you'll say, "Oh, these people got so much, I should have that too." You don't see that there's so many unfortunate ones that can use that little help.
Mm-hmm.
They got, and that's why, if I got any regret where I'm at now, I wish I could do more. After I retired, I did Meals on Wheels for several years,
Mm-hmm.
and down at Burleson, and I went all over there, and I loved that. And at times I think about it, like try it again, but then once you get, kind of old like that, you spend half your time doctor's appointments, something,
Mm-hmm.
Just that minor stuff to keep you going, and you hate to get involved in something like that and then let them down when you're scheduled to do it.
Well, I appreciate you for meeting me again, and all the good stories and lessons.
Well,
If anybody else has any questions, follow-ups, I'm sure we can reach out and
okay.
maybe do this again if we need to. Or
I'd love to, like I said, it's great, man. Just, I get in touch with Ray and them and have other firemen. Just ask him, is there anything you can do for the, I'm sure he's got a lot of, because it's, Everman especially has got one of the poorer districts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's where the people are underserved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of the way the world works.
Yeah.
That,